Hello and welcome. I'm Pauline from Pauline's Quilters World. I want to talk to you about our sasha tools once again. This time I'm going to show you how we make a piping on our binding, because it really adds a lot of interest to our quilts, like this one here. When we add this little flange piping, or we call it a peeper strip, it really sets off that edge of your quilt beautifully, and it's so easy to do, and you're not going to burn your fingers. We can see on this sample up the back here, we've got a much finer piping on this one, and we've done multicolours. So if I was going to do a fine piping like this one, I would use the 3/8 of an inch sasha tool and the 1.5 inch sasha tool. To do a binding like this one here, I've used the 1/2 inch sasha tool and the 1.25 inch tool. So that's what I'm going to show you how to make this size, but the smaller size would be just using different size tools. The other products I use, or notions I use when I'm doing my bindings like this, is I use the monopoly invisible thread, I use the Roxanne glue basted, and I use the clover fork pin. They're 3 tools that really make this job very easy for me. To start with, we're going to start with a strip of fabric. This is the strip that's going to be used for our piping. This I've cut 1 inch wide. Now you would cut it on the straight grain all the time, except if you had curves on the corner or you had a scallop binding you were going to do, you'd cut it on the bias. What we're going to do is fold the fabric in half and press about the 1st inch with your nice hot iron. Then hold the fabric in your hand. We'll use the 1/2 inch tool. We go up from the bottom and then we go straight back down that hole. So we're covering that centre bar. So this is what it's going to look like. Now put that on your ironing surface and pin with the double fork pin. That'll put equal tensions on both sides of that fabric. Just push the pin in so that the iron doesn't get caught on it. Hold the fabric ahead of yourself with a little bit of tension on it. This curve on the side of the tool is designed to fit the side of our iron. And all we're going to do is push with the iron. You don't have to touch it. You're not going to burn your fingers. You just keep coming down. If it's a big long strip you are doing, I would suggest you stop and you move the pin up to where you're at, and you just keep pushing along. And you'll have that narrow strip folded up in no time at all. It'll be perfectly even folded for you, and as I said before, there'll be no burnt fingers. So there's our piece folded in half. Now the next step we take, we'll cut our binding strip 1.25 inches. If you want to do a double fold binding, you would cut 2 strips 1.25 inches. You would lay your folded strip down, lay it right onto the edge so the raw edges are to raw edges. Put this one on top. Then you would go to your machine and stitch 1/4 inch in all the way through till you get the whole 3 pieces joined together. Once you've got them joined together, like we have here, you will fold this out and you'll see that we've got that little strip in between. Now fold it over, and we're now going to press the 1st inch just to get it nice and even. Do that on both sides. We'll use the 1.25 inch tool. We'll go up and straight back down. We will then pin with the double pin. So we're going to pin so one side of the pin fits on the little piping side and one on the binding side. We will fold it over, hold it firmly, and we push with the iron. Now that's going to fold that piping strip out for you, and you're not going to have to stand here and pull it and tug it and try and get the iron in there to get it nice and even. The tool does all the work for you. And there you have your lovely folded edge, and it's nice and even on both sides, and you don't have that little fold in here to worry about. It's come out very even for you. So that's a double fold binding. if I wanted to do a single fold binding, I would make my 1/2 inch strip. I would cut one piece 1 1/4 inch and sew that on. I would fold it out, press the first little bit to get it nice and even, put it into the tool. Because if you're making a quilt that's not going to have a lot of wear on it, you might save fabric by just doing the single fold. But if you're going to do a quilt that you want to last forever, I would recommend doing the double fold. Now all we do is push with the iron. And once again you get that lovely, lovely neat finish. And you know, it adds so much beautiful charm to your quilts to put a binding on like this. The next step I take, we're going to put a binding on exactly the same as we do on a normal quilt. But I stitch my binding on from the wrong side of the quilt. So this is the back of my quilt. I stitch it on with my 1/4 inch seam. I do the mitered corners exactly as I do for a normal binding. I join my ends like I do a normal binding. The next step I take is I use the Roxanne glue basted. Right on my stitching line, right here where I've stitched the binding on, I put little dots of this glue. Love this glue. Just put little dots all the way along. Put some out on the corner. Then we just fold this over and with a hot iron, press. Now what that's doing, it's setting the glue so that when I go to my sewing machine to stitch this, I've got no pins, nothing to contend with except that row of stitching that I have to do. And this is where I use the monopoly clear thread. I'll put this in the bobbin of my machine and in the top. But just a little tip on using this thread, it comes, I call this a jacket. This gauze I call a jacket. Once you undo your thread for the first time, please put the jacket on there and that stays on there forever. When you're filling your bobbin, it stays on there when you're sewing with it. Because what that does, it keeps this thread controlled so it doesn't come off too fast. And oops, it's just caught up. But it just allows your thread to come off there without getting twisted around your spool holder. When you put this on your bobbin, please fill your bobbin at a slower speed. Don't go flat out. And only half fill the bobbin, because this is such a fine thread. If you fill the bobbin right up, you've put too much thread on the bobbin and it's hard to get it off the bobbin winder. So now we're going to go to the machine. I use an open toe foot or a stitch in the ditch foot and I stitch right in that ditch all the way around, and then you've got your binding stitched on beautifully. It's so easy to do and the tools make it just so perfect, because I just can't imagine standing there folding that little fold bit out and getting it all even without burning my fingers. So this is another little quilt we've made where we've put, because it's quilt as you go, so I've put the piping down either side of my sashing and I've put a really narrow piping on the binding as I stitched it on, just like I've showed you how to do it. So happy stitching. Enjoy all our tools. We love questions. We love you to watch our videos. We've got lots now on YouTube. You can look at the videos on our website. Subscribe to our newsletter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we're at pqw.com.au. Thank you and enjoy. Till next time.